If you want to go ahead and do a roll call, Cassie?
Mike Bullitt. William Beck.
Here.
Colleen Lautenbach.
Here.
Allison Pitt. Here. Shelby Poole.
Here.
Greg Sayan. Carly Sherrill.
Here.
Julian Squirtle. Joe Bell.
Here.
All right, Joe, you are the lucky winner today of the mission and vision.
Right. So, the mission of WLA is to utilize leadership-based programs and strategies grounded in solid research, combined with the demonstrated success of core knowledge curriculum as a basis of a rigorous overall educational program that builds strong skills in math, reading, literature, writing, music, science, and technology. And the vision of WLA is to be a school where students and graduates become exceptional leaders and are prepared to take on the academic and leadership challenges they will face in high school and beyond.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda, including our consent agenda, which is the April 24th meeting minutes and the special meeting minutes, as well as the personnel update that was included in our packet. So I would make a motion to approve our agenda for the night.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any further conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Is there any conflict of interest for anyone this evening? Public comment? I thought maybe you were here to speak to us. All right. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Jonas for our superintendent report.
We're already there, huh?
Do you have anything for the board?
Oh, no. Because we're talking about elections and stuff later, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did send you the back. Okay. All right, well, superintendent report's a little briefer this time, but all our committees met, our enrollment's hanging steady, right about where we need to be. I think maybe one ADM under what we're budgeted for right now is what it's looking like. So pretty close. And then enrollment for next year, as we talked about last month, if every class was at its target enrollment, we would have 1,090 next year. I think we're budgeted now, I think we made it 1,068 is what we made it. Currently, we have 1,141 enrolled for next year. That does include 17 students that would be returning that say they're undecided. So if you took all of those out, it would be 1,124 still. And again, the idea is that until the end of the school year here, we're scheduling 2 over per class, just with the understanding that students withdraw. And the more we can have enrolled now, the tighter our transportation can be, and it'll make things much better not having to edit so many students, right? So after we get to, past the last day of school, then we won't add any more students unless they are less than 1 over per class, right? So, there's a few grades we would add students because they're not at their target yet or not 1 over per class yet, but the grades that are like for kindergarten, for example, where there's 152 enrolled for 140 spots next year in 6 classes, we wouldn't enroll another student after the last day of school unless it got down to 145. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And so we're continuing that approach, pretty close to what we used last summer, and ended up pretty good on where things played out. We've completed all of our required state testing. Teachers have been working on, particularly in grades K through 2, on the DIBELS testing and the progress monitoring testing, because those grades don't have spring testing for the state, so they do their 3rd testing in a separate way. Our principals have been working on having end of the year meetings with teachers this month. Things appear to be on track budget-wise, continue to appear to be there. We continue to monitor the FY26 working budget, both in terms of enrollment, in terms of as we're actually hiring people and plugging actual salaries in. And I think the thing that's creating the most variation right now is some of the costs potentially associated with adding our new facility that are not covered by the project. So everything, you know, in terms of building the building out and the facility out is covered, but furniture, for example, is not something that can be covered in it. And some of our estimates on some of those things have been maybe a little bit low that we have to adjust for. But we'll do that and continue to monitor it tightly.
Are you looking at how you might get furniture for the additional students here in this building? For instance, I have 22 students currently, but I'm slotted for 24. So that's 2 more desks that I need in my classroom and all the other classrooms as well.
Well, I mean, we're enrolling up to 24 right now. Your target is still 22.
Right, but we all still will need more
Yes,
desks.
yes.
Like across the board, every single classroom will need desks.
Yes.
So like
And-
not only stuff for the new building, but
Yes.
this one as well.
And Ben, you can speak a little bit to it too, but we've inventoried as we've been doing orders, the inventory, everything we have, everything we need for, I mean, I'll let you speak for yourself instead of me speaking for you.
Yeah, so we go through, this is typical each year, that we add sections into our school and/or that we need to add different equipment. So we go through and we inventory first what we have, and try and look at what is still sustainable for another year. Sometimes we lose chairs throughout the course of the year because kids are hard on items, right? So we inventory all that, and then we go through and we look at how can we replace these items in the most cost-effective way. One of the challenges that Ms. Pint maybe has kind of alluded to is sometimes some of our classrooms like to have individual student desks, whereas we have more availability to have tables. And so it's kind of a little bit of a mix and match game to make sure that teachers not only get what their preferred equipment is, but that it's also within our budget to be able to provide those. But yes, we have done inventory on our current table kind of setup, and we are looking at this facility as well as that facility.
Yeah. And lockers we did too.
Yep, lockers, we've done the full head count. We know where our extra lockers that we currently have in storage are gonna go, where we've gotten halfway decent at doing this. And keeping these together, we always still seem to run into something, but lead times on furnitures at the long end is 12 weeks. So like some of those orders need to be placed like now in order to ensure that they're going to be here. One of the other things that we do look for in our spaces is we do look for other schools that are unfortunately no longer going to be able to use some of their equipment, and that's how we can really find some cost-effective and high-quality equipment. So we always keep our eyes open for that type of stuff too throughout the summer, and we send our team with a moving truck to different locations to be able to fill those spaces.
Yep. And there are at least a few of those we already know of for next year that we might be able to add to our
Collection.
And Ben did a good job getting estimates from 3 different companies on the furniture, and shared those with the finance committee.
Yep.
So we're in a good place. We'll be okay on that part. But it was more expensive than my budget, even the cheapest option. So that will be a budget revision that we'll have to do with the next budget revision. But fortunately, our enrollment is over what was in our original budget too, so we shouldn't have to take from anywhere else to cover it. It'll come from the added revenue. So that's okay. Under human resource management, at this point, we have 4 licensed positions open for next year. We had a kindergarten teacher who had accepted a position that ended up not working out. So we have a kindergarten position open again now. We still have a middle school / high school physical education and health. And then special education, kindergarten special education, first grade. One thing that's not on the agenda tonight, but that I don't know if we need to do something official or not, but I am gonna throw out the suggestion, doing the middle / high school thing kind of doesn't sound the greatest and it's kind of wordy. I was using secondary school for a little bit, but there's some cliche and you know, schools that tend to be high performing academically, if you use upper school, lower school. And so I'm going to just throw out as a potential discussion next month that we, moving forward, can just plant the seed right now to think about. But maybe consider doing upper school, lower school for what we call our two different levels. So anyways, in terms of a safe learning environment, as we all know, we have the purchase agreement signed by both parties across the street. Gonna dig in a little bit on showing a little bit of the current plans over there later in the meeting tonight. But we're in the process, we've met with 3 of the tenants over there this week, kind of going through our plans, getting a little bit of a feel for what their thoughts are, their plans for if they want to stay through their leases or want to explore early termination. And so we're getting a feel, and we're also getting a feel with what concerns they have about sharing the space for the times that we are sharing the space, and working to try and figure out how to best live in that space for the period of time we're all together. And then in terms of communication, really the big piece is next week on Wednesday, we have individual meetings scheduled for 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. By individuals, I mean 10th grade meeting at 6 o'clock, 9th grade meeting at 7 o'clock. And that's really working, putting together a presentation for here's what our plans are, here's what it will look like for next year, here's what it will look like the year after as things progress. And then doing the same thing for 6th and 7th grade the following week. Because really the reality is, depending on the grade you're at, you have a kind of a different reality. And so that presentation should look and sound a little different for each grade level to really communicate well with people. And there's a reality that because this purchase agreement took so long, and that we had a confidentiality agreement that we couldn't talk about, even that we were exploring this, it really prevented us from communicating with families over the last 2, 3, 4 months about what the plans are for next year. And so, I've only heard from a couple families with concerns about it, but we certainly would have been much more thorough in the plans, discussions if we could have been. And so I really want to take time to give each grade a time to really go through it and share, what that looks like. And when I say that there's a big difference in reality, the biggest difference in reality is for for next year's 8th grade, and then 9th grade and 10th grade, they're going to be still 1 class per grade, right? We're not really, so it's almost like we're piloting and doing things on a real small scale, which there's some advantages that, you get that's advantages of the small there, but there's also a lot of disadvantages in that you don't get things with economy of scale, and you can't have different level math classes for those grades, and you can't have as many electives and so we just want those families to really understand, here's what the advantages are, here's what the disadvantages are. And we also want next year 6th and 7th grade families to understand, hey, it's really, what it's gonna look like for you is really different than what it's gonna look like for the families these first 3 years, and you shouldn't just talk to families that are in it right now for what it's gonna be like when you get there. And so we really want everybody to really just understand what the realities are. So so there's no families feeling like, oh, this isn't what we thought we signed up for. And so that's the purpose there, and that's going to be a big focus of mine the next 2 weeks. Questions on anything in the update?
Dibbles, they're doing during class time this year, will you be setting aside days for one-to-one meetings next year?
In the fall still, yeah.
Just in the fall?
The challenge is that they really need to do it 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very, very intensive and time consuming. We have some other staff members helping out with them, but it's a little easier to do it, not easier. It's a little less unreasonable. Still probably unreasonable for teachers to try and do it during class time, but when your kindergartners and younger kids are at the end of a school year and have routine, then trying to do that at the beginning before kids can even really be independent at all. And so, it's not realistic calendar-wise to provide full days for teachers to do that 3 times a year, but if we can do at least 1 of the 3, it helps. So that's the thought, and it's much more difficult to do the first time, both in terms of where the kids are at, and even for all of your new teachers that have never done it before, it's much more a slower process the first time you do it. So, yes, that's built into the calendar again in the fall, and that's why. And if you don't know what DIBELS is, I know that it stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Elementary Literacy Skills. Former colleague really memorized that, because I would always misspell it, or the acronym, I would always misspell it, so I've got it now. But it really does do a good job monitoring where the kids' reading skills are at in their early reading development, to really know what we need to work with them on. And so it's really valuable, and it's also kind of a required component of the READ Act, which is teachers that are going through letters training know all about it. And so it's an important piece. Any other questions? All right.
I do have a question, actually.
Yes.
The presentations that are going to be given to 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10th grade families, you'll be there, will teachers be there? Who's going to be the presenters?
I'm the primary presenter.
Okay.
I'm preparing,
Okay.
which actually ties into another piece we're going to look at later in the meeting today, in our org chart, and I'll explain some things that will help explain why. Teachers are welcome there, but we're not expecting them to be there, particularly because there are so many events right now that teachers are having to be at these last few weeks outside the school day that I didn't want to push them to be at another one.
I'm sure they appreciate that. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to our financials. Jolene is not here. I was at the meeting, so I can go ahead and present financials. So looking at our April financial report, our executive summary, key financial indicators. Our budget was original 847 ADM. We're currently working under 880 ADM, and our actual enrollment is 880 ADM. Our school's original budgeted surplus in the general fund for the year is $233,463. The school is budgeting to spend $5,000 out of the community service fund, a projected cumulative fund balance of $2,594,732, or 25% of expenditures at fiscal year end. Our working budget is projecting a surplus of $208,915 at fiscal year end, which results in an ending fund balance of $2,570,184, or 23% of total expenditures. Projected days of cash on hand is 74 days of annual expenditures, which is above the 45 days and meets minimum bond covenants. Our projected debt service coverage is estimated to be 1.38. Should the school bond in the fiscal year 26, the required debt service coverage ratio will be required to be at least 1.2. If bonding is not completed during the fiscal year 26, the debt service coverage ratio will need to be at least 1.1 to satisfy bond requirements. As of month end, 83.33% of the year is complete. Our cash balance is $1,718,287 and went up from $1,716,323 in the previous month due to the regular processing of transactions, as well as the receipt of a portion of our PY state aids receivable or tuition billing. Revenues received at the end of the reporting period, 81.3% of the working budget. Expenditures dispersed, 79.2% of the working budget. The fiscal year 25 title amendments have been submitted to the Department of Education. Fiscal year 25 working budget has been updated to reflect updated expenditure and revenues based on fiscal year activity. And the fiscal year 26 original budget process has begun and will be presented to the Finance Committee and Board of Directors. Looking at our finance meeting minutes, Jonas, Jolene, Judith, and I were all present. We discussed the financial statements. Everything looks normal. We didn't see anything that was a cause for concern or question. We did discuss building classroom furnishings. We talked about Jonas had mentioned earlier that Ben presented 3 different options from 3 different companies. And we went ahead and gave the okay to move forward with, we ended up going with the cheaper one, but paying for the installment.
Which still made it cheaper than the
Yeah,
second.
and it was still cheaper, even with them coming and delivering and assembling, it was still cheaper than our next one.
Let me just, we probably really should have had that furniture contract being approved by the whole board. So we just make a note to add that to next month. So it's more than $25,000.
True.
Even though finance committee did it. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but if it's approved next month.
It's okay, we can spend it before this.
Okay.
You can go ahead and make the order, it's okay.
yeah. We don't wanna start school without chairs. So, and it was a pretty short meeting. Our next regular WLA finance meeting will be held on Wednesday, June 11th at 4:30 PM virtually. We adjourned at 7:45. So I would like to make a motion to approve the April financials and the May committee minutes.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Back over to Joe for our governance.
Yeah, so governance met on Thursday, May 8th. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend. Carly and Rick and Jonas and Allison and Nicole were all there. Discussed policy 413 to review interim human rights officer, which was updated, and that policy was in the packet for the first reading for the board. Policy 417 was also sent to the board and the website updates on that. Just confirming a couple of sections are implemented in a couple different sections on that. And then policy 806 for mental health protocol. Nothing was added to policy, but Jonas is working on adding a process for mental health issues. And then also discusses the gift giving policy, which was part of the packet for the first review for the board. The facility naming policy was also discussed and also sent for the first review for the board. And then the policy 540 with physical education uniforms. We requested the gym teachers to remove the PE uniform verbiage from policy and website, and also added some high school verbiage to all of that. And that was also sent as part of the first review for the board. Apparently they discussed transition and I got appointed to governance chair. I wasn't at the
So
meeting.
what happens when you're gone, you get appointed as things.
You drew the shortest stick, you just don't know it.
Yeah, for not showing up, so, no, and future discussions will be continued review of the 400 series, annual policy reviews, the cheating policy. It still has policy 540 on there, which I suppose because it's in the first review,
Oh.
so for the PE uniforms, or was there something?
We just snagged it up and did it real quick.
Okay. And then new student journalism policy, new library material policy, and the next scheduled meeting is for June 12th. At 5 p.m., which I guess will be Rich's last meeting, so I have to pick his brain quite a bit. So make a motion to approve the May Governance Committee meeting minutes and enter policies 210, 413, 540, and 809 into the first reading.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I'll throw out just a typo on policy 210. Where was it? 4B. It says gifts instead of gifts. So it's just missing a T. So my proofreading brain caught that. But otherwise, everything else was fine. Any other discussion?
It's nice to have fresh eyes.
Yes, it is. Just, yeah, I was on that committee, I know. At a certain point, you're just like,
All of us.
yep.
Blurs.
Yeah. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Facilities report. Ben, Jonas, which one of you wants to?
We canceled our facilities meeting this last time because it was just after the special board meeting where we discussed all the topics that we would typically discuss.
And we actually have a separate agenda item to talk a little bit about the facilities, but I think we covered that.
Yep. All right, moving into the presentation and discussion items. 7.1, elections update.
You have one more night to self-nominate, so anyone listening want to send that in to the email. Otherwise, we have still 0 community members interested, but we have 3 teachers running and 2 parents. So,
Really need a community member.
yeah. And so Monday morning at 8 a.m., those will be sent out to all staff and family members or parents, and then closings next Friday at 5 p.m. is when it closes.
You said 3 teachers and 2 parents?
So I'll be sent out with their statements, and then after that, I'll get in touch with Shelby about who won, so we can communicate that out.
Yep.
Get them in here to be trained as well.
And it's Jolene and
Jolene and Mike
Mike's decisions.
and Greg, but Greg's rerunning.
Okay. So we would have 2 parent seats open then?
Yeah. Oh no, just one parent. Sorry.
Oh, because
Jolene's-
he's community.
Yeah, he's big
Yeah,
over
yeah.
now.
That's right. I forget that.
So nobody submits by
Tomorrow
tomorrow
at 5.
at 5, and we have an open community seat.
That we
And
can.
then in July, or we'd have to revisit, is there, if anybody expresses interest, the board can talk about either a special election or appointing somebody.
Yeah. And on the ballot I put for the community, I still have it as an option, and I just put, if you know anyone interested, please have an email. So maybe that will.
Give it a write-in campaign.
Yeah.
All right. At our next meeting, we will need to appoint a board secretary and a board treasurer. It sounds like governance chair has already been taken care of, so we'll make that official next month after Rich is officially stepped down. So if any of you are interested in serving as the board secretary or board treasurer,
Well, technically, we need to, for all the positions, even if you're staying on, we have to
yeah.
redo them every year.
I just wanted to put it on here mainly just to think about it, so when we are at the June meeting, we're not just looking at everyone. And then also, I don't know if, is everyone on a committee as well?
I'm not actually.
Okay, so I didn't think Greg and William were, so I don't know if we wanted to get that figured out by then too. And then our new people that get appointed at the June meetings, we can get them assigned to a committee as well.
Is it in our bylaws or anything that all board members are required to be on a committee? Do we know?
I think so, but I can double check.
Can we double check that? Because,
I think it is.
okay, if it is, that's fine, but I might suggest if it's not in there that with a 9-person board, perhaps there's some value in, there's not too many board members in 1 year, of giving board members 1 year to kind of go through the process before they join the committee to get that committee. Just a thought. Not even anything I thought through, just off to my head, so.
I can imagine treasury, you're in charge of like the financial stuff, but can someone speak to like the responsibilities of the secretary?
I basically do all the secretary stuff, so honestly, the biggest thing is you just step in for the chair when they're gone at a board meeting.
Okay.
Or if you were gone,
Or if
maybe
I'm
step
gone,
in
you
and
have
take
to
the minutes.
the notes.
Okay.
If-
I've only been one, so.
So like, are you jotting down things we're saying right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, the big things, I have a template that I use over and over, and after doing it, you kind of just, and then it's also recorded, so then I go back before I type the minutes to double check things.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be, because it's recorded, if somebody agreed to be the secretary, and you had Cassidy was gone, and you had to.
Usually I just watch
If you
it.
missed anything, or you just be getting her head start on it, really, you might watch.
It's a pretty easy seat, to be honest.
So I don't know about the bylaws, but it is on the performance expectations that you will attend a board meeting and participate on a committee. Greg and William, I would encourage you to think about your strengths and where you would best be able to contribute as far as joining a committee. All right. Back to Jonas for our facility plans.
Yeah, what about the two, I sent the building A1 first?
Oh, yeah.
My stand-up point thing here. Perfect, that's good. Okay, so regardless of what happens with across the street, right now, building 3A has 10 classrooms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this is the 10th. This is not big enough to be a homeroom type classroom, it's an interior room. It's a smaller, it can be small groups, it can be, right now it's being used for occupational therapy. But next year, we are gonna have 6 classes for 5th grade. And then the next year or 2, we'll have 6 for 4th grade. So we really need 12 classrooms on this level. To continue to have 2 grades in building 3A and not have to split the grades up. So we really debated between a plan that would essentially take this area here, with these 2 smaller rooms that are currently being used for special ed and ELL, along with the current classroom in these 2 offices. There's a plan to make that into 2 classrooms instead of 1, and also a plan to expand this, take some of the hallway space to make it big enough for a classroom to add 2 rooms. The alternative, and the much easier, cheaper, faster construction option, was to take what's currently the 3A cafeteria and make it into 2 classrooms. So those were kind of 2 options we looked at. And we went with this one after really giving a lot of work looking into how to make the lunches work. And we would have to have more lunches instead of 3 different lunch periods. We have going to 4 lunch periods with 2 per grade to make things work. But the decision was just better classrooms. This would not have an exterior window and less expensive, quicker to construct. So that's kind of what we're doing to solve the problem here. Even though we'll have enough classrooms overall in this facility long-term, with the added grading, we can split grades up without doing that. Okay, we tracking? What that's being paid for from is from what's called our repair and replace fund. So every month we essentially pay our mortgage or lease, $10,000 goes into repair and replace. That can only be used in our current facilities. That can't be used across the street, and can only be used on physical, not something brand new, but adapting, adjusting, fixing something that's within the building. And we're gonna have about $400,000 in that account by this summer, because we've never drawn from that before. But it's not money that can be used for salaries, it can't be used for books, it can't be used for anything but this. Yes?
Adding a lunch period, what's the first lunch and when time does the last lunch?
My lunch is until 1.
On the new schedule?
Mhm.
Okay, the last one.
Yep, 11, and the last lunch starts at 1.
So morning snack for those
Yes.
1 o'clocks instead of afternoon type deal?
Yeah. Not perfect times, but of course we don't start till 9:20, so it's a little different than if we were starting at 8 and eating at 1, but still agreed. That was part of the whole, trying to figure out what makes the most sense here in terms of having decent classrooms. But this leaves us because we are on a very, very tight timeline getting into that building in the fall. Like right now, we're tentatively closing July 22nd, late July, and 4 to 6 week build out. I mean, I think we're gonna get it done, but there's, who knows where a delay could happen that we're not seeing. And we need to have a backup plan, right? And so the backup plan is that you do both, right? We have 4 classes going over there. So the 4 additional classrooms would essentially be doing this plan to get 2 more classrooms here. technically, this is one room we wouldn't have to have for next year. So that could kind of be the third. And then we'd have to use the library for the fourth. And we'd have to move the library books either to a set portion of the room right now or to behind the gym space for your, or until we're in the new building, right? But that would be that's kind of the backup plan. And with that plan is far less than ideal. You'll end up with grades, configurations where classrooms are not making sense, having 8th grade over here and maybe 8th grade here and 8th grade, something in the library, 9th grade in the library. I mean, the grade configuration will not be ideal for that period, but hopefully if we do get in that situation, it's for a month.
Yep.
Or for 6 weeks, or for 2 weeks, or it's not like it's a whole school year thing that we would have to get through. But that is really kind of the best we have for a backup plan if it's not able to, if there's any delay in the process. We're tracking kind of what that looks like. So that's what we're doing there. This would be made into 2 classrooms. This would be made into another one, library, and that would give us the space we need. It just wouldn't be configured well for that short period of time. And not configured, if we had to do the same thing for 2 years, we would rearrange how we're setting things up in the first place, to do this, but we're not gonna rearrange it and then change it back to what's ideal without it. It's 4 weeks later. So it'll work. It won't be ideal if we get in that situation, but I just think the board needs to know we do have a plan and it will fit. But it will be tricky and tight and less than ideal if that plays out.
Do we have enough rooms on 1A for the sections of K1?
So, no, the kindergarten will have to be split, and right now with our current draft of the plan is first grade will also, 6 sections of first grade will stay there. And then the 4 sections of kindergarten will stay where they're at. So that's the 10 rooms there. And the other 3 sections of kindergarten are going to be in 2B. So kindergarten is going to be 2 teams, a team of 4 and a team of 3 for a year. And then most likely, once we shift 7th grade over there, now kindergarten will have 7 or 8 rooms on the first floor. First and second will be second floor. There's 14 rooms there.
So there's enough first grade class, like the existing first grade classrooms are what we need for next year?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, just the downside, the piece that is not ideal is we have to split up the kindergarten. But we kind of have to do that we don't have to do that in terms of space. We kind of have to make them 2 teams anyway with 7 sections of kindergarten and 6 specialist teachers. They can't all have the same prep.
And also for lunch space, it's gonna end up being very beneficial to split those kindergartners. Instead of doing 7 classes of kindergartners in one lunchroom, to do a 4 and a 3. And so we've worked that into the upcoming schedule as well.
Yeah, so it'll work. I mean, there'll be some things that aren't exactly as you designed in the transition period until we get through it, but I think it was a good plan overall. So that was basically just what I wanted you to see. What is the part in orange on the left side, that is,
That's the library.
that's the library space, and it's just showing how many tables you can get in there, different ways you can configure that. But that's that piece. All right, we can go to the building. Unless there's questions about this, we can go to building C. Questions about this before we do? Okay, building C is what we're referring to as the building across the street. And we've kind of seen this already, so many different variations, but, okay, so this, what is the writing on the bottom say?
First floor, 2026.
Okay, so let's go to 2025 first. Go second floor, 2025, which one's that?
Up to.
That's future, so go up 2 to start. Let's start,
All 5 classes.
okay, so this is really the plan for the 4 classes next year. Right in the upper left space, that you're gonna have a 990-foot science classroom here, which is a big classroom. A 700 square foot classroom here, which is less than ideal size, right? Because we're making a temporary special ed room here until we have more space elsewhere. Then this wall can come out and it'll be a big classroom. Again, but we're kind of crunched in the space right now. Tracking? And then over here is about an 800 square foot classroom, about an 800 square foot classroom. That's a decent size. It's about what this is. This is about 800 here, to give you an idea. So the small one is, about 15% less than this. And then this room temporarily is a cafeteria / flex classroom. What that means is that the furniture then ordered their tables that are really pretty quick and easy to set up and take down type thing for lunches, so that we can use it for specialist classes when it's not during the lunch window. There's actually gonna be like a glass garage door that comes down to like electronically push to go down to make it enclosed to be a classroom, and then you open it up when it's gonna be a lunchroom. That's kind of the way we're making that space versatile within there. And then.
You don't just want to build a wall off the bat?
What's that?
You don't just want to build a wall off the bat?
No, one of the reasons, sorry, can I jump in? One of the reasons why we're talking about doing the door that can open and can close is because we're more than likely going to need additional space outside of that kind of cafeteria. There may be some tables that need to come out in kind of that group area when we're using it as a cafeteria. And again, we plan on using it as a cafeteria for the first couple months until we gain more space downstairs. And then when that happens, what could be a possible plan is that small classroom could then go over into that larger space, so we don't have to take down a wall immediately, and then kids can do their specialist classes when they come over in the smaller one.
So the only thing is, tenant meeting this afternoon, but I haven't talked since yet.
Oh, sorry.
So you don't want you to know. But it looks like we're not gonna get in that other space until at least February 1st. They're building out, the spine clinic is building out their space, and they feel like they're on a tight timeline to get done by the end of January. And they are even seeing if we might be open to exploring them extending it 30 days. Which we did not agree to. We need to see how things look when we get in the space in the fall. We'll work together on things. But, so what he's saying is, this other side of the building here on the second floor, this would not be until at least fall 26 that we have with this. Talking to tenants so far, I think it's realistic that that can happen for fall 26. We haven't talked to all of them yet, but the 2 of 3 weeks so far appears to be like that's gonna be workable.
Which sides of that section are the 2 that you talked to?
This one, definitely what's up. We actually have not talked to this one yet, but kind of
But the front of the
heard that they
building?
are. And this is the one we don't know, the one that's right here.
That's what you're on about. It looks like we could access the front of the building though.
So there's options, yeah. But let's go down to the first floor. So what we're talking about on the first floor, no, you, oh, you're right. So this is what the first floor would intend to look like once we fully build it out. Based on the timeline, we wouldn't necessarily fully build it out next year. We might just need to demolish walls and make it a big space to use for bio class and lunch. Move the lunch down there to make, so I have to keep converting it upstairs when the time comes for next year. But this would be an intended commons lunchroom. It can, so these are dependent on other dominoes as well. Whether we want to make this in classrooms or not, partially depends on what we do with what we are able to do with the building that you're tentatively looking at putting a gym in right now. If we're able to put classrooms in there, enough of them, we may not need these as classrooms, possibly. And so we may want it to have a bigger space. So there's a lot of moving parts here. But there's like design, the point is to really show you, we have designs where if we need to use that as classrooms, we can. If we don't, we have other options with it. And that this space right here, like if you look underneath this, it says admin and nurse and staff room, like that's one possibility. Or we can use that for a classroom depending on where needs end up being, depending on the other dominoes with what happens with the gym building and so on and so forth. Tracking, is this making sense? Okay. But that's what that will look like. We've also learned, if you go down to the bottom now, first floor, full build out, where's that? That's right here. This space that is currently the daycare, sounds like they're gonna be there till at least 2031. So that sounds like they're not really interested in moving. So based on that, we need more spaces than the rest of the building can hold. Tracking, so that's like information just in the last, we weren't able to talk to tenants until this week. And so so many dominoes depend on what the tenants are thinking and going to do. And we have at least, and you do a good job there with them. So then, right now, but the main thing is you see what it looks like for next year, and it will be tight until the spine clinic space is available, which now looks like it's later in the year rather than earlier. And so that's kind of where those pieces are at. The other discussions we've had is depending on what the estimates come in at, which is what they're working on right now. So they're going to give us like 2-3 different versions of estimates with the gym building. One where we have 4 classrooms on the main floor, 4 classrooms on the second floor like this building does, to get 8 more classrooms, where then we don't even need the daycare space anytime in the near future. Probably is going to be out of our price range. Right? Probably going to be where we'd have to tap into general operating. Then they're going to give us a lower down version and a lower down version. But based on us really appearing that we're going to need more classrooms, there could be another option we could explore too, which is just adding on to the building for classroom space and not gym space.
Mm-hmm.
And using the gym space, continuing to use the gym space here for gym for that, which would mean elementary would have to have less gym and more other specialists to make that work. But, you know, that may leave us money to do some things that at a far more conservative cost.
Mm-hmm.
And we might even be able to do some things like make an outdoor, outdoor facility for extracurriculars with turf and things that would make it really feel like a high school. I mean, we do already have access to a really nice gym, if not enough, but that's a gym that you can do high school varsity basketball in and volleyball in, and it feels good for that. You have to walk across the street from where you're at. So I think we are, depending on where prices come in, I think there's also some new consideration to that depending on our budget.
Where are we at with our fundraising? I know we had kind of talked and had that guy that you were gonna meet with and talk about fundraising.
Yep. And that is, it's a slow process.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be a slow process, but we have, that we are in the silent phase of actually. So
Okay.
I probably shouldn't say more.
Okay.
But it is moving forward.
Okay.
How's that?
That's good, because that would be funds that would maybe,
But that you're realistically, we can't count on any
No,
additional funds
absolutely
in
not.
this. That would be more than you adding on to make things special and
Yeah.
better
yeah.
after. That's probably a 2-3 year process to really.
But it would take the burden off in some places where we
Yes.
could recoup things. And-
Yes.
Yeah.
And add a bunch to
Mhm.
what we can do, and that's our hope and expectation.
Mhm.
So, to whatever extent is being realistic.
Okay.
And there'll be more coming on that soon.
Another question with the build out with the science room, and having neighbors and things like ventilation and like, will there be lab type stuff happen? I mean, high school science, we ideally would like it to be a lab. So is that?
Yeah, I mean, we have the possibility to add some of those pieces in. Right now, the way that we're kind of planning for that science lab is that in an ideal world, it stays a science lab throughout, but we're giving us the possibility of changing that room's purpose if it becomes, another room becomes available that has better access. But our students will be able to do the labs that they need to do in the coming year with the space that we have. We have chem closets, eye wash stations, those types of things. But the piping in of gas, whether or not we do that as a mobile station, which you can do, just hasn't been explored yet.
But it has been, we have explored enough to say that we're going to get tables that are designed for high school
Correct.
science for that space, and trying to make sure to put the science where there's plumbing,
Yeah.
access, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But, yeah, I think that's, beyond that, yeah, for sure. Making sense where we're at? So just a lot of moving parts, and as we've talked about, where the bond, the estimates, we have contractors doing bids and so on and so forth, but whatever those estimates are, they still change a whole lot depending on what happens with the bond rates week before we close. I mean, that's when it really determines how much money we have to spend on the project. And we have 3 years to spend that money on the project, so you have to do it all right away. You can move in phases, but where that ends up will have some impact on what it actually ends up looking exactly like.
Is it gonna be a problem if we don't build the gyms instead of gym in our plan?
No, we'll have to make that decision before we go to the
Before
bonds.
signing?
Yes. Yeah. And that's what we learned in the last month meeting, or at the special meeting, when they're talking about GMP, which I didn't necessarily know what that meant when they were saying it, guaranteed maximum price. So we were saying, well, what if we don't have enough? Well, no, there has to be a guaranteed maximum price, and these are the things. Now, if you may end up with a few, 200,000-300,000 less and able to do the project in less than what you thought you were able to by some, and then you might be able to add like turf, or, some of those things we're talking about. But it has to be on specifically that building facility. We couldn't take that and use that money in this building, but it has to be part of the project that the investors are investing in.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
With respect to the daycare,
Mm-hmm.
are there any legal questions about daycare children in a building with high school children?
No, and for a couple of reasons. Well, one, I mean, it's not that uncommon, actually. There's a lot of schools that have daycares within their schools. Some do it to have daycare for the
Theater.
employees' children even.
Right.
I've actually been led to school where we had a daycare for moms in an alternative high school setting. But in this case, it's particularly not concerning to me from the standpoint that they're their own separate entrance. Our students will have no access to their facility.
Okay.
Their kids and staff they'll just never be in any contact, not in the stairway, not in, I mean, it's just their
Right.
own entry, their own, it's really like it's attached, but they're really so separated that I don't have any concern about any contact happening.
Now, here's the next question. How old are these kids? Like
The
6 months to like 3 or 4 or something like that?
Well, and even they do some school age care in the summer, not when we're there necessarily.
Right.
And after and before school, yeah.
And that's on the first floor.
Right below where we're gonna be.
That's my question. So,
Is there noise concerns? I think we'll be okay noise coming up. I think the bigger issue is, are we getting
Noise
too loud
going
for
down
them?
when they're taking it
Yeah,
down.
cafeteria.
So the reason why I asked that, because I thought that through. How long are they saying they're gonna stay?
Well, their lease is until 2031.
Uh-huh.
They informed us yesterday that they have a 5-year option in their lease.
Mm-hmm.
So we couldn't get the due diligence documents to look at all the leases and look at all the stuff until
Sure,
after the
right.
purchase agreement.
Right.
So those were just delivered this week.
Got it.
So we haven't even had a chance to fully go through all these documents. So I haven't been able to confirm if that's true or not, but they indicate that they have, I knew the lease expired in 2031.
Mhm.
They're indicating they have a 5-year option to renew.
Mhm.
So that we'll need to look at those documents more closely to figure out if that's accurate or not. But
Because my whole thought is, yeah, they got leases and legal paper. Here's what I know. If you have a building that is literally a school, okay? Spine Center doesn't want to they don't want to be in a school, right? It was okay if we had a couple of classes and they had a Spine Center in this building, but it's our school, right? So now, every tenant is literally, even though they have documentation, they're literally at the mercy of the realities. And that is, you got junior high, high school students above your kids trying to take a nap. And little kids take a nap. There's no such thing as they don't get to take a nap today, right? So I don't know if that will, I don't know, it sounds cool, but I don't think they're gonna, I wouldn't.
And from from my perspective, we have a legal obligation to honor the
Honor,
leases.
yes.
And to, and so that's what we are going
do
to
that, yes.
do. But we also, conversations have been very collaborative with the tenants we've talked with about how we can make the space livable. They're so far being honest about, what their hopes are in terms of, the other 2 tenants we've met with have both indicated that their preference would be to relocate when they can, but it's also got to be a time frame that works for them, and they can find a space that works for them, and then not in a rush to do it. And in the meantime, we have to make sure we're honoring leases and doing what we can to make it
Cordial.
a relationship that works as well as it can
Right.
with tenants with different uses.
Right.
And we're not claiming it's gonna work perfect, but we're gonna be, honor the leases, and that we're gonna do everything we can within reason to make it livable for everybody in the interim.
I have one more thought, and that is, when we put our kids over here, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10, 11, 12, in the future, right? I think it would be advantageous to all of the teachers to let all of their 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade students know we're going through some things. We're going through growing pains, but we want you to be honest with us and tell us how you feel about your new school. Because what you don't want is kids saying nothing and going home and saying, it sucks, man, it's class. You know what I mean? So you want the kids to feel part of this. You know what I mean? We're growing our school, man. It's got to be like that. So they feel part of the whole process, and they'll get that from our students, they'll get from our teachers. The dads and donuts, we'll do our part. So there has to be a collaborative thing, and the kids can feel part of it. Because, a lot of times things happen to kids, they're like, it happened to us. We didn't have anything to do with it, right? So that's just my thought. Because I know for me, Kingston is first grade. I see him graduating on the same campus, right? I see all of these kids I see playing in 1st, 2nd grade. I see them graduating. I see senior prom. I see father-daughter dance. I see the whole picture, right? So I'm looking all the way down the road. I mean, I got a 1st grader, so I kind of have a whole road to go on. But I don't want kids going into the 7th grade next year feeling like they're walking into, some goofy charter school in a church basement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we interviewed, I don't want to give much time. My dad was a Baptist minister, so I don't know how to cut it short. But we interviewed 5 schools before we settled. The first school was this one. We went to 4 more, and they were all makeshift in a little building here or in a church basement. They were supposed to be good schools. It was just weird. I'm like, how do you guys do this, right? And then we came back here with Kingston. And we got out the car door, and he ran into the school before they'd ever seen him. Like, I guess this is where we're going. Right? So the energy and the vibe of this school is so dynamic and so cool, especially when I pick up Kingston every evening and we stand there and watch all these kids play. And even though they're rambunctious as little boys and girls are, they're very polite with each other. You know what I mean? So that's a culture thing. Right, so I want that culture I don't want him to have to go to some other school where he doesn't know anybody, weird culture. The culture he's framing now and we're framing now will carry through till he's an upperclassman and all these kids back here are learning that culture from them. Right, so I'm just super excited about the whole deal, so.
Well said. I think that probably leads pretty well into our next discussion. So, just thinking about before I put this up, I should have given you this document before this meeting. I finished it this afternoon. So, this is what I'm proposing, but completely open to feedback. And so I just want to kind of acknowledge that ahead of time. But this is our draft organizational, particularly leadership organizational structure.
There's not a single word on it.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I know.
I was hoping somebody.
Actually,
I don't want to feel.
you know, can we,
I can share it with them if
Can you share it
want.
with them?
Yeah. Just bring it over back here so I can see what I'm doing. Alright, share. And finally learned how to make a shortcut to just share with all of you.
I haven't seen her since you won the award, because she used to come all the time with you, but she doesn't come. She's
It
like
is now
so
in your
cool.
email.
you all should be able to open it from your email.
I suppose I have to think.
Okay, so, school board supervises, your school board's one employee. I am proposing or recommending that what we have, that in the fall, I serve as a superintendent and the interim principal for grades 8 through 10. That I take the leadership for those 4 classes and supervising those teachers there. And that Ben, this should also say interim, right? In addition to being the director of facilities, operations, and activities, is the assistant principal for grades 8 through 10. His whole position is a principal level, principal level position, not an assistant principal level position. But the idea being, we've seen the way things played out this spring, that what's involved in facilities and operations and activities to do those things well, and being the principal for 3 grades in a different building is gonna spread Ben's role too thin. And then I probably actually have more capacity moving forward, and a lot of the work that I'm doing, I'm able to do more sitting in the commons there, supervising classes and doing it at the same time. But the idea being that when I'm here, normally Ben's there, and if, Ben's here, I'm there, then one of us is at least 90% of the time over there with the, with the 4 classes. And part of my wanting for that too is this is why I say it's a good lead-in, is I just feel like in order for me to best guide and support the person who will be the long-term principal in that role, me being in there on the front end of things will put me in a lot better position to support them and ensure the long-term success of the high school program. And it is kind of at a point where we really, there's a lot of directional things, and I just think me being there, I'm gonna kind of own that. And then that's why I'm saying I'm going to present to the parents next week and the week after, kind of leading those presentations and sharing that. And the idea is that would be 1 year, maybe we extend it 2 at the most, but I'm going in with the idea that's 1 year, assuming that we're able to afford and everything fits to add another administrative position the following year as we continue to grow. So that's really kind of the big change. But then the other part of that change is that, because K-7 is in this building under this plan, so right now we have had extras elementary principal, and then we have a dean of students here. And the idea is K-7, when K-7 next year, we'll have 44 classes in this building, these two buildings. Right, we have 4 across the street. So, like 44 is, this year we have 39 classes with everything combined. So with adding 9 classes, it's a lot. And so essentially what we'd be doing is having a K-3 assistant principal, a 4-7 assistant principal. And K-3, we're promoting Nicole Seidler, who was the dean of students this year, to that role. And we interviewed for the 4-7 positions, not yesterday, the day before. And we had, was it what, 10 on the committee interviewed? Ben, you were on the committee as part of the interview, but I think there was about 6, 7 teachers, and then the 2 principals, and the dean, and I actually was not in the committee because it's really more Patrick's position to hire it, he'd be supervising it. But with the idea we would have another round. And so, and then in order to support the added classes, we'll have a behavior pair for K-3. No, actually 1 for K-1, 1 for 2-3. Essentially 1 for each building. We'll be adding 2 behavior pair positions. 1 for the K-1 floor, 1 for the 2-3, 1 for the 4-5, 1 for 6-7 here, and 1 for across the street. And so in terms of the total number of administrators, it's the same as what we had this year up, until this trimester. It's just taking having 3 principals and making it, not kind of what I'm doing, 2 principals and 2 assistant principals as opposed to 3 principals and a dean. Right? So we're not more admin heavy, it's the same number of positions, same cost essentially. But restructuring, that's what we feel will work for next year. Once you move 7th grade across the street, now that's too big an animal for me to do in addition to my superintendent job, or for Ben to do it. That's a different piece, which is why I say a 1 year is kind of the view, but we're trying not to add administrative costs. We're trying to put our money into salaries and as much as we can. And so that's kind of how we came up with the structure we think will work for next year. It's all tracking, is this making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Is there questions or concerns about this? And particularly, the most relevant question and concern is, are you comfortable with me doing the 8-10 high school thing? Because you supervise as a board, me, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm recommending this, but that's really the most relevant for the board. And my conclusion has been, I think this is the best thing to set us up for success.
I think then if we continue to give you a mid-year review, at that mid-year review, then we can let you know. Even if it's a quarterly review, and we say, this isn't working and you are spread too thin, we need to make changes.
Yep.
So as long as we have kind of that fluidity to tell you, hey, this is working or this isn't working, and I think you can probably let us know what you could handle on your plate.
Yes. And I think there's also a piece there too that we would consider if we really think it's not working well. Then the second piece is financially, do we have room? Are we gotten to a place where we could add another administrator mid-year? And then are we finding the quality administrator we want mid-year or not? It would all be part of that equation, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to spread us too thin. I feel like we've made commitments to address our teacher salaries and not add support positions. I certainly don't want to add become more administrative heavy when we're trying to make that commitment. And I also want to make sure that, Ben's doing a great job, right? But we knew for this trimester it was going to be a lot. And I think it's probably not, I think it's more sustainable, more likely that I can add that to what I'm doing right now than Ben can maintain that in 2 different buildings with facilities, especially with so much on the operations side in the new
Yeah.
building. We've got to figure out custodial, we've got to figure out just all the different pieces of, we're not going to have a property management company with the tenants, we're going to be managing the tenants, and that's going to ultimately fall on him. And it wouldn't be fair on him to just add, it's one thing for one trimester in one building,
Right.
but
And as you grow into high school, like more activities and later evening things that he's gonna be expected to stick around for and all of that kind of stuff.
and we don't want those things to suffer either, so that's
No.
really important, so.
I guess the one.
Come on, Superman.
I agree, he can't do 2 jobs. Are you sure you're not going to
That's-
burn yourself out?
Well, Allison said we'll have to, no, I'm not sure.
Are you relatively confident that taking this on will not burn you out?
For 1 year, yes. I'm not confident that doing it for 2 years will be sustainable, but I feel, I'm not 100%, like, I don't know what I don't know until we get into it.
Right.
But I do think it's within my wheelhouse. I was a small high school principal for how many years? 9 years. In high schools that are small and that size. So it is only 4 classes, right? Which there's a lot of things that you have to do the same whether there's 4 classes or there's 12 classes. But there's a lot of other things that there's less volume too. And we'll have to evaluate how it's going, but right now I see it as the best option. And if I feel like it's not working, or you feel like it's not working, then we'll reevaluate what our options are. But my gut tells me for 1 year, this is the best option of the choices we have.
Would it be helpful, or is it even possible? Is there anybody that would qualify? I don't see the org anymore, but there were some other assistant principals and some promotions, like, just to kind of help delegate since his plate's so full and it's a lot you're taking on too, like, can any of them sort of backfill with any of
My
them?
concern is that we have 44 classes in these 2 buildings.
Right.
And 4 there.
Yeah.
I don't
Should
want
be
to
manageable there.
stretch this building I want to make sure that we can manage what's happening
Right here.
effectively here.
Yeah.
And having the more people we have split between 2 buildings, I think it just disproportionately adds to the mix.
Right.
Where so much of the things that I'm working on are not building specific,
Right.
right? And I can work on it from here or there about equally as well.
Yeah.
And where a lot of things Ben's working on are gonna be building specific in each space, and he has to be in this space at times and that space at times, and that's what I think partially makes it more manageable for me
Okay.
than him. But
I was just saying, even like if one of them took on, would they have capacity to almost, it'd be like 3?
Well,
Between the 3 of you, if it's too
well,
much for
that's-
you two,
that's
is
where
there
the-
another one that
that's
could
where-
kind of
That's where
backfill
we're gonna have a
little bit?
behavior, one of the behavior para positions for over there.
Okay.
So
That makes sense.
that 10% of the time when one of us isn't there, we still have somebody to manage behavior.
Gotcha.
And, that's a non-licensed position, so
Yeah.
we have to be careful about the level of not giving that person unreasonable or inappropriate level of.
But it's nice to know there might be a third
But
person
there'll be a
that's
person, yeah.
kind of helping support you and
Yeah.
Ben, so you're
Yeah.
not on an island by yourself.
It's a whole different mentality. It's a small
Yeah.
school mentality, big school mentality.
Yeah.
Over here, these 44 classes, next year, we're big school.
Mhm.
And people's roles are much more narrow.
Mhm.
Over there, you're small school. When you're small school, everybody wears more hats and has to do a lot more things.
Mhm.
And of course, the piece that doesn't quite fit with all that is that I'm leading the big school and the small school in addition to doing. But
Yep.
I also don't think it's reasonable to hire another administrator over there. It's too much. It's not, it wouldn't be the best. It's just
It's just
not-
good to know you guys have, you and Ben will have a little extra support
Yes.
too, that as needed, not full-time, that.
Yeah,
you know,
but I also really meant what I said too. I think me even leading there for 1 year, whoever ends up being the upper school principal, if that's what we end up calling it,
Mhm.
I'll be in a much better position to coach and guide
Right.
and support, having done that for 1 year.
You know,
And being kind of in the front end and really understanding all the dynamics and pieces of it. And
Do we know if anybody else on our staff is getting their administrative license?
not that I'm aware of, and I think I would be aware,
Yeah.
based on all the conversations we have.
Yeah, Because that would be another way that you could get additional support. If somebody else was getting their license, then they would need to do certain things for those hours or
Yes.
whatever.
Right.
Yes. But I will say, that doesn't, I mean, most years, not this year I haven't, but most years I have ended up having somebody do their administrative hours with me, from other schools even. So there's also possibilities of that, or here, that's good. Good idea, actually.
Free help.
Yep.
Harvard,
So-
Harvard had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
1636, that's when it started.
I was 12.
You were 12 in 1636.
All right, so that's our plan, that's what we're moving forward on. Again, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I think of all the options, when we piece it all together, this is what we felt like was the best option for 1 year. So, and believe me, if I thought there was a better option, I wouldn't double my work, workload, or maybe not double, but, I do think it's doable for a year without me worrying about it. I'm not saying 2 years, but for one.
All right. Any other conversation around that or questions? Not, we'll move on to our calendar for next year's board meetings.
That was mainly just to give you guys, why is it?
Put it on the,
So Joe caught my one, I thought you guys maybe would want to hear on a Friday, but I guess not. So this one is the only one that doesn't work with NEA weekend, otherwise everyone else is the third Thursday of the month, so I just figured I'd put that together, and then that way you can have it on your calendar. Any conflicts of any of these, you think? What? And then this one doesn't, this is a week before Carnival, and this is a week before open house.
Is there anything different about this than this year?
These are the third Thursdays instead of the fourth Thursdays.
Instead of the fourth? That's what, I don't know if we talked about that.
So then that way we don't have to.
work around Christmas
Yeah.
and Thanksgiving and
And then this is the only one that, it's actually this.
the 4th.
Mhm.
The fourth.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Got it. My previous school, our board meetings were on Mondays.
Oh.
And when we had on the 3rd, it was President's Day and Martin Luther King Day.
Mhm.
So that's why I was thinking there were so
Yeah.
many conflicts on the 3rd, but on Wednesdays there's not, so this is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, so that's why we switched it, because there was always conflicts on the fourth. All right, so I will add that to the website.
Cool.
Good.
How heavy is our summer meetings?
They're, I think, pretty light. Usually there's just a lot of approval of things, but I feel like they're.
Yeah, this summer's probably gonna be.
I still have lots of commitments. I'm
Yeah,
like,
if you need this meeting, as long as we have a quorum, we're fine.
We have one, yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I'm like prior commitment right now, but it got canceled, so we're.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, a number of charter schools take July off of meeting.
Yeah.
The BOA, Stephanie, even has really pushed that we should have them
Okay.
every month,
Mhm.
so. If it wasn't for that, I'd say maybe we could, but.
Could they be virtual? No?
We have to, I think we have to put the address of where you are meeting virtually. So
Oh.
you'd have to list
You have to be in a
your
public
house
Oh, I
address if
see.
that's where you're gonna have it.
So,
And then people could join you.
I'm just going
Yeah.
I mean, there are ways to have virtual, somebody has to be here, but you're also, I think, are only supposed to be able to do like 3 meetings a year that way. And wherever a board member's meeting from has to be an open public space that's posted that anybody can come. So, it's kind of hard to do from where.
Yeah.
It's-
Do the July one, fine.
It can be at a ball field.
Yeah, there you go. We'll just come to your address.
But obviously, we're not gonna put big heavy stuff on the July one unless we have to timeline-wise. You know, if there's a timeline-wise thing with the instruction or whatever, then we don't have a choice, but.
If I remember correctly, I think the summer ones are shortest.
They're usually pretty quick.
But,
Don't quote me.
but again, I'm not
Go
sure we
with
know
the-
what we're gonna need to approve or,
This summer might be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but most likely, those things are not things that are gonna be controversial or you know,
Right.
that we're just gonna need approval.
It's still same time, right, 5:30 to 7:30?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, consent agenda. We'll do a roll call vote. Consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed. Consent agenda items are as follows. We're approving our April meeting minutes, our May special meeting minutes, and our personnel update. Is there anyone who would like anything removed? All right, Cassidy, if you'll do roll call.
William Beck,
Yes.
Colleen Lautenbach,
Yes.
Allison Pint.
Yes.
Shelby Cole,
Yes.
Greg Stain.
Yes.
Carly Sherrill,
Yes.
Joel Valentine.
Yes.
We need to approve the Monarch busing transportation contract. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look over that. Yep.
So first of all, before we get into it, we sent the request for proposal out to 6 different bus companies. 3 of the 6 I didn't think location-wise would necessarily work. And one of them responded that the 3 reputable bus companies in your area are Monarch, Schmitty and Sons, and Safeway. And I didn't know about Safeway, so we sent out one to them as well. Both Safeway and Schmitty and Sons had indicated they were gonna do a proposal, and both ended up not. Schmitty and Sons have a garage in Lake Elmo, which was close, but they ultimately decided that they were just overextended in terms of drivers, and they wanted to make sure that they could do it well, kind of thing. So we ended up with only 2 responses, one being Monarch, who their rate increased, I think, up to $11.50 a bus. The other company that responded was more than $100 per route more per day. So that's more than $1,800 per day, times 174 days was $318,000 more for the second company that bid, so didn't get a lot of consideration at that point. So just so you know that we really did try and do our due diligence and work to get contracts. So with that, questions?
2(1)E says school not entails any credits or offsets, yada yada, for any reason whatsoever. How about if they no-show because they don't have enough subs, or can we put it into 3.3 A or B that they must agree to have enough people on staff to sub when they get several calling in?
Well, they always have given us a credit. I'm wondering if it's somewhere else in, I'm wondering if that's somewhere else in there. 'Cause- And even when we talked about, we met with them to go through everything, they talked about the credits when they do. Ben, do you remember that at all?
I remember them missing a couple times, and I believe that they gave us credit for those or did not charge us for those days. But that had only really been an issue in one school year where that would happened repeatedly.
It's happened a few times this year, though. With just one particular bus that they had a driver who went on medical leave in November and thought was coming back, and the medical leave kept getting extended, so they always had a substitute driver, because the driver was coming back, and that became problematic. But that was one of our 12 routes this year. I will look at that.
I didn't see it, but if anyone sees it in there somewhere, just making sure it's in there. 2.1M, is this a 3-year contract, or are those price increase numbers just like if you were to extend, this is what
would be a
this is-
3-year. And looking at the percentage increase, even at the 5%, even if it ends up on the high end, so if you read it, minimum of 2.5% increase per year, up to 5% depending on the consumer price index as of March 31st, whatever date it says. And of course, I'm looking at, just kind of assuming we'll end up being the 5%. But it would have been less than that several years. But even at that, that's a much lower increase than we've seen for the last several years in bus contracts. So, and what was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean, I had put out that they can do a 1, 2, or 3 year that we'd be open to considering, but prevents us from getting stuck where we could end up with 10 or 15% too. I mean, I feel like the risk is higher of it going up more than the potential benefit of savings of things going down, does that make sense? In current environment, but yeah, so that's the advantage is you lock in and all of a sudden gas prices double and, well, of course they got a gas piece in here too, but wages double or, you know, you have some control.
At the end of 3.3A, it says drivers who fail to adhere to the contractor's standards and applicable laws will be subject to removal from service to the school at the request of the school. Can we knock out that last little bit so that they're just gone if they're not meeting standards and following applicable laws? We shouldn't have to follow, like, hey, how are your reviews? And then request it, like, they should just do it.
I'll follow up with them. I mean, the piece is, yeah.
I think it makes sense in my brain, the way I read it is, like, if we were to make a valid complaint and we were to say we do not want this driver any longer, they will honor that, is how I read that.
That's how I read it too. And what you're trying to say is that if they have.
If they're noticing something on their end, they need to just do it.
We can do it. Yeah. I mean, they're going to.
And maybe they have their own, and we're just not seeing it, like they have their own like checklist for their employees or whatever.
Right.
Right. But I mean, the main thing is that if we are identifying that there's a driver that we're feeling isn't safe, that they're gonna make the change. And I feel like this says they're gonna do that on their contract. If they have a driver they feel like isn't being safe, and we haven't reported it, they're going to do that anyway, because they don't want the liability.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So, I'm not sure there's a lot of value, but I understand what
I
you're
was just
saying.
understanding it differently too.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I will talk through that clause with them.
I forgot, I mentioned it back in 1.3. It says Highway 36 for the Lake Elmo boundary, but I'm pretty sure they mean 94. I'm not going that high in the Lake Elmo part. It says part of Lake Elmo west of Manning, south to 10th Street, north to Highway 36, but we're not going that far up, are we?
Yeah, I think the boundary was there.
For Lake Elmo, a little?
It was 10th Street. It was 10th Street to the north.
Yeah.
I don't know what the two Highway 36, I mean, we go to Highway 36.
In 622, but that's separate.
Yep. So it's actually, they're just saying they're doing more than they're actually gonna do. But, yeah, that.
I just want to, because it says south to 10th Street, so I just want to, it should be south to 94 and north to 10th Street, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's from 94 to 10th Street to Manning at the east. Okay, I'll get that fixed. So basically, it's what the transportation boundaries were this year. Plus, we added that small part of Lake Elmo.
Yep.
Plus, we added the very eastern part of Woodbury, that's technically in the Stillwater district. And then there's actually a part of North St. Paul district that they weren't doing, a small part, that we're legally required to do all of North St. Paul, because that's the district. So those are the pieces that we added to what we have.
We're in North St. Paul, not Woodbury and not Oakdale. Interesting.
Well, Oakdale, we're in the city of Woodbury,
Yes.
but the school district is the North St. Paul, Oakdale, 622
Oh,
district.
okay.
So that district is North St. Paul, Oakdale.
Same thing happens in my neighborhood.
Yes.
I live in Lakeville. My kids go to Apple Valley High School.
Yep. So, yeah. Honestly, from a cost standpoint, this is going up a very reasonable,
Yeah.
a reasonable amount. And a couple other things we insisted on when we met with them. We insisted that if we have the students that are busing to them by June, what date was it, June 10th, I think we said?
June 9th, I think. 9th, I think.
Yeah, June 9th, that they would have initial routes to us by early July. So that then we can make tweaks to it and really get them out to us much earlier. And probably as we've been thinking about this, what we're gonna do is even though we anticipate very few changes after that, just to give ourselves a little flexibility, our intention is to July to send to the families that, if the bus time says 8:55, we will say, we will commit to families that between 8:50 and 5 minutes either side of it is when your bus time will be, and we'll send you the exact time. So families can plan, they know about what it's gonna be, but if we do have to add a couple routes, or if we have some families drop and we can get there sooner, we're not completely locked into that still, even though we're anticipating far less changes. So we'll kind of say that we're committed to 5 minutes on this side of it. And the families basically know and plan their lives in July.
If I could plan my life in July, that'd be great.
Can at least plan the bus pickup and drop off time part of their life.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay.
That's probably a more accurate statement.
Sometimes it feels that way though, I'm sure, because if families are trying to get to work by a certain time, they need to know when their kids can get on the bus.
Right, right, and that typically the families haven't gotten that information until back to school days.
Yeah.
And so now we're
Yeah.
getting that information within 5 minutes of when it will be
Yeah.
in July.
Well, it does say their final. It could be within days. But that's only if we request other changes, right? Like, okay.
It was us pushing that timeline, not them.
Sure.
And they were happy with it. I mean, they were, that's one school, they have a ton of all their different schools. Really, we most of them get the stuff real late. But it's appearing like we're gonna be, as you look at our enrollment, like, there'll be a number of grades, we will not be adding any more students after June 6th. But first grade, fifth grade, we'll have to look at if we're really in a place to say, for those few grades that were not quite full, are we gonna get to full by saying you have to go on an existing route without adding a stop or not? That was the goal, and we're there at most grades. There's a couple grades that, get close, and that's where I think the 5 minutes on either side will give us a little cushion to be able to add a few families on the bus without, with being able to stay within that window. It's kind of how it feels like it's playing out. Makes sense.
Great, any other discussion? So I think then we go ahead and make the motion to approve the transportation contract, because really what we're approving is the price. And then you'll work on correcting the few errors that we have found and asking about the credits
So maybe you can do it, we're
With-
approving the contract,
with
but
suggested.
with authorizing me to make minor
Suggested
revisions based on
Okay.
discussion with the board table or something like that.
Yeah, alright,
That way it's approved, move forward, but yeah, it's.
but we can still take it. Okay, so I make a motion to approve the Monarch Busing Transportation Contract, and also allowing Jonas to make minor adjustments as needed to fit our needs.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. So again, just the big push for elections, and make sure that if you know anyone who would be interested in community seats, that you please ask them to self-nominate, and if they don't miss that deadline, like Jonah said, we can still bring them on in a different route. But it's nice to have those voices at the table. It's nice to have those connections at the table. It's nice to have a full table. It's been nice to have a full board for a while. And there are times where we had like 5 or 6 of us, and that just gets tough to have quorum and all of those pieces. So go recruit some good people. Our next meeting will be held here on Thursday, June 26th at 5:30 p.m. And I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried.